Minorities in North Africa. You'll hear from a number of others involved with this project in the context of the broader session on heritage in the Maghreb. Those of you who are familiar with ASOR Cultural Heritage Initiatives and our ongoing work around the Mediterranean know that our work generally falls into these 6 broad categories. And our work with religious and ethnic minority heritage is really concerns 2 of these categories: documenting this heritage, and then also fostering education, stewardship, and broader awareness. In recent years, a lot of our awareness and outreach work has been at sites of classical antiquity around the region. And that's, of course, in keeping with the broad interests of ASOR members globally, and also in keeping with the interests of many of our local partners, civil society groups and governmental agencies charged with the care of these sites. But as we've had the opportunity to engage over a number of years and in more profound ways with representatives of various civil society groups, we've come to understand as an organization that there are other kinds of heritage that are top priorities for preservation in the region, but that have not yet really had the same sense of focus or interest from local frameworks of protection. Such sites include some of the great granaries and townscapes of the Amazigh communities, often found in the mountainous areas of North Africa, as well as sites of religious minority communities like the Jewish community in Tunisia. This site, the synagogue of the Hara in downtown Tunis, was once one of the most prominent places of worship for the Jewish community in the city. That now is, it's no longer there, and the site is used as a soccer field. This same story is all too common across the region, and we've seen it again and again. These sites of religious and ethnic minorities in particular are disappearing before our eyes. Here in the community of Essaouira, Morocco, the quarter of the city where the Jewish community once lived is actively being dismantled at the moment. We have Christian cemetery also in Essaouira, where again time takes its toll, and the provisions of the state at various levels already overwhelmed, honestly, with the vast collections and heritage sites around the country, have not been able to offer that kind of protection to such a site. At the same time, we know that conditions are, in a sense, getting more favorable for this kind of work. It seems like, as we've heard from our colleagues in across North Africa, really, but particularly in Tunisia and Morocco, that there's now increasing desire to think about this question of how to honor such heritage and offer real protection. And, for instance, there have been high-profile examples such as the King of Morocco, supporting the establishment of the Beit Dhakira, conversion of a synagogue in Essaouira to a space of memory honoring Jewish history in the city, and a broader sense of pluralism in the community. But we see the same sort of encouraging trend in the strong attendance at the Ghariba festival and pilgrimage at the island of Djerba in Tunisia, where this specific religious event, a pilgrimage of Lagwat Omar, bringing members of the Jewish Tunisian diaspora from really around the world, coming to Djerba to participate in the festival alongside members of the local Jewish community and notables, from the rest of Tunisia and of diverse faiths. Doing that in a highly public manner and in a way that's both a religious festival, but clearly with the prominence of the Tunisian flags here, sort of seen as honestly a point of national pride that such events can take place. This kind of encouraging trend, helped us at ASOR imagine that more work like this might be possible. And that's why about a year ago, with the support of an anonymous donor, we have been able to launch a new project, which we call Heritage Advocacy in North Africa, and which is really intended to support the documentation of religious and ethnic minority heritage sites, but honestly use this process of documentation as a tool for broader public engagement, both raising greater awareness in both of those countries about the prominence and importance of those kinds of heritage sites, and also building additional documents that can be used as the basis of formulating future conservation projects, future ways in which members of civil society and of these religious and ethnic minority groups might more productively engage with local government at various levels to protect these sites. And ultimately, since the process of documentation itself is involved enough, we see this as a really great opportunity to encourage greater cooperation between faith groups, between ethnic groups, recognizing that the goal of heritage protection can indeed be a unifying goal. Much of this work begins with mapping, and we've been intentional about trying to deploy relatively easy to use, open source, open access tools, and particularly tools that for us as a small community of users, that we aren't trying to invent or support financially ourselves. And one powerful part of that is the Kobo toolbox developed by the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative, which we've been using to facilitate some of our field data collection and data form development. And it's been really successful in large part because it's so flexible in terms of being a platform that is compatible with multiple languages. A lot of our data collection is, of course, conducted in Arabic and French. And we've been heartened to see that some of our partners in the region have been not only using this tool in the context of this project, this joint work together with ASOR, but also using this tool to meet some of their other objectives, whatever those might be as an organization. And while many of our partners have been somewhat daunted at first by the idea of translating this field data into a format that can be used and navigated successfully in GIS framework, we have found that QGIS as a platform has been accessible enough that we've been able to share some basic skills and ways in which this powerful tool can also help not just document sites for this particular project, but be more useful as a tool for data collection and analysis for our partners moving forward. And in all cases, this effort for just to identify sites of importance really relies on close partnership with local organizations, the participation of members of either these local religious and ethnic minorities, or participation of other allies who care about the same sites. For a subset of sites, we supplement the mapping efforts with really more detailed drawing intended to serve as baseline architectural records of the sites in question, really providing the collateral needed to begin to plan for more in-depth conservation interventions. Our general approach is inspired by the documentation work of our National Park Service in the United States and the Historic American Building Survey, and draws on some of their long efforts to provide meticulous, measured representations of some of the most important sites in the United States. The thought that this kind of simple black and white measured drawing can be used not just as a record for future generations about the places that matter most, but really serve as the basic tool to plan for any conservation needed at that site at any point in the future. And to make our workflow somewhat easier, we of course rely on photogrammetry as a way to rapidly capture three-dimensional data that is measurable and can be translated into these kinds of measured line drawings. Here a data set taken at one of the abandoned synagogues on the island of Jerba in Tunisia, as well as the community water cistern at the mosque of Fadloun, also nearby in Jerba. And a lot of our efforts to train members of religious and ethnic minority groups in the use of these tools, we have captured them in a series of online tutorials that are freely available on the ASOR website that exist in multiple languages, including English, French, and Arabic, and that other members of the ASOR community should use if they find them useful as a way to convey some of these same skills to other partners and other projects. Now, of course, that kind of virtual training only gets you so far, and we've begun to have progressively more intense field training sessions. Here's my colleague Hanan Sharaf, who helps lead some of this training, working with our partners from Cartagena and Manuba University in Tunisia. Likewise, my colleague Jared Kohler, who's been doing some of this field training work recently with members of Jewish and Amazigh communities in Morocco, in partnership with the High Atlas Foundation. And in general, as this documentation unfolds, our conviction is that the results that we get from all of this field work will be useful as we conduct ongoing campaigns of public outreach, helping a broader community understand the importance of this larger conception of heritage, and using that broader support really to help justify ongoing care and protection. So for those of you who have been following ASOR's work in this general domain of public outreach, a lot of that work has relied on basic tools, this museum approach, motivating groups of volunteers to get engaged themselves and roll up their sleeves and get directly involved in heritage protection whenever possible. And we've been gradually translating that same approach and directing it towards these questions of protecting religious and ethnic minority sites. Here are some members of the Laboratoire du Patrimoine at the University of Manuba, starting to test out the beginnings of a suitcase museum related to the history of Jewish music in Tunisia and the seminal role that it's played in shaping concepts of what traditional Tunisian music really is. Finally, we hope to use the documentation that we collect and the small outreach initiatives that we undertake to engage local communities, particularly members of local government, in more substantive conversations about how these religious and ethnic minority sites might be better to protect in the future. And we've recently seen some real headway in that regard with the assistance of one of our partners, Professor Habib Kazdagli of Manuba, where we've been able to help support the engagement of members of the Tunisian diaspora, Tunisian Jewish diaspora of Monastir, Tunisia, returning and conducting a conversation with members of the local city council there in Monastir about ways in which the memory of their community could be more publicly honored in Monastir through simple efforts of renaming public spaces and sites to honor prominent members of the Jewish community that once lived in Monastir, to actually repurposing some of the buildings still owned by members of the Jewish diaspora to both serve as sites of memory, honoring the history of the Jewish community there, but also to meet other community needs like local public health center. Of course, as you've heard again and again, none of these ambitions would be possible without several dedicated partners. Not only the anonymous donor that supports this work, but in Morocco, the High Atlas Foundation, in Tunisia, Carthagena, a nonprofit working to protect and help others understand the value of Tunisian heritage, and the Laboratoire du Patrimoine at the University of Manuba, and its associated nonprofit dedicated to the protection and care of Tunisian heritage. And we're heartened to say that we'll be able to expand the same approach and the same work to a broader region. So in addition to Tunisia and Morocco, we will continue doing this work with religious and ethnic minority groups in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger in the Sahel, so expanding south. And in the meantime, our ongoing efforts for similar work in heritage protection, heritage documentation, and outreach continue in Libya and Algeria. So over the coming year, we at ASOR Cultural Heritage Initiatives anticipate really working across a broad swath of North and Western Africa and the Sahel. Thank you for your attention.